First of all, the conference looks amazing, and congratulations to Jeff again, another great year. I wanted to take one of the subject matters today and connect it, real time to something that we're doing at AOL, and I'm not going to go broad on AOL. If we have Analyst Day tomorrow, if you want AOL information, we're going to be showing it all tomorrow, and it'll be online. I want to talk about something really personal, and one of the projects we have at AOL, because it's been really personal to me, and it's the story of really where I think the future of the web is going, which is offline is the new online, and the story behind Patch, which is one of the largest investments we're doing as a company, and it's local community news and information. About 3 years ago, I live in a fairly small town in Connecticut, and every Saturday morning I had a ritual of getting up with my 3 kids. We drive to the bagel store. Part of the reason we go to the bagel store is to get bagels, but we also, there's a board there where people in the community put up local information about what's happening. Generally, after we get bagels, we drive up to a stoplight about a mile away, and at that stoplight, people put stakes in the ground, almost like campaign signs of what's happening in town. So about 3 years ago on a Saturday, we were doing our normal ritual, and we happened to drive up to the stoplight, and there was a sign that said a Renaissance fair was in town. So I took my kids over there, and when I got to the Renaissance fair, there was only about 20 kids there, and it was the most amazing fair I'd ever seen. There were real live Renaissance people fighting with real swords, and people who were very steeped in the history of the Renaissance period, and really explaining to kids how the Renaissance came about, what everything from the art, culture, war was about, and it was probably the best event I had been to in my town in the last 10 years, but nobody was there, and every kid in town should have been there, so that stuck in my mind. Later that day, my father-in-law moved to town, and he lives in a condo development, which at the end of the street, the condo development's on, there's a community center in a former school where every Saturday there's hundreds of kids out there that play soccer and lacrosse and rugby, and people speed down the street. It's a double yellow street, but people drive much too fast on it, and anybody who's a parent notices that. And my father-in-law said to me that day, he said, it's really amazing, and I didn't know this had happened in my town. He said they voted down putting in a stop sign halfway down the street to slow people down, and it's going to take a kid getting killed before people realize that they should have shown up for the town meeting and voted to put the stop sign in. So that was the second thing that happened that day. And the third thing was my wife and I were trying to volunteer our kids in town to just help. I grew up in a family that did a lot of volunteering and a lot of service. So I went online to just find out that weekend, maybe the next day or later that afternoon, what we could do in town to volunteer, and there was literally no information about it. There was one site that I could find, which was a regional kind of county-level site for volunteering, but it didn't really have any information on it. And that night, my wife and I were talking about it. I said, this morning, every kid in town should have been at that Renaissance fair. Someone should have covered the stop sign getting voted down, because the town didn't want to pay the money to put up a stop sign because someone is going to get hurt. And 3 is we're trying to do something for our community, and you can't find information about it. So we decided that night, I decided to do more research. So I spent about 3 months researching all the information that was available in our community. I started getting the local newspaper, and I would go through on the weekends and write down, basically take statistics of how many stories were local versus national, and all the information that was online, from volunteer information to community information to events. And at the end of it, I had a pretty robust set of data about what was available in towns, in my town, and I called a local newspaper, and I essentially gave them the idea for Patch. And what Patch is towns typically have between 2,000 and 4,000 websites. They should have about 8,000 websites if you were to add up all the information in town that should be online. So I explained to the local newspaper what I thought they should do business-wise. The person I spoke to on the phone had just gotten back from covering one of Obama's campaign, kind of the launch of one of the campaign tour, and I said to it was the managing editor of the paper, I said, I love the fact that you're covering Obama and the presidential race, but I'm actually more concerned that the local newspaper should cover things locally, and I gave him the examples of what I had looked at over the last 3 months, and after 45 minutes, the person nicely said, I'm not interested in this. We have a great newspaper. We don't need help, and hung up. And From that point forward, I decided to put a personal investment. I co-founded Patch with a person named John Broad, who's at AOL, who runs Patch and is the CEO of Huffington Post Media Group. And we decided to hire 10 engineers, build a town platform that I think every town in America or every town in the world should have. We launched the town and launched Patch in 3 towns in New Jersey and tested it for roughly a year just to see what happened, what people used, what they didn't use. And we decided to hire full-time journalists in each of the towns, and that's a core premise. So Patch, you know, from the time a few years ago, now is in 825 communities in the U.S. There's journalists in all those communities. We hire journalists on top of that, and freelancers and a whole set of other people to collect information. We digitize everything in the town, so we get all the school information, government information, business listings, religious information, events, and put it all. So at the zip code level in your town, we basically have curated or created the information for your town. And we're seeing incredible results. Towns that have been up for 3 to 6 months have typically about an 85% penetration rate, implied penetration rate. The best judge we can do is 85% of the population is on Patch at least once a month in those towns. And we haven't really focused on monetization yet. We're just starting to do that. But what we focused on was how do we actually help communities out. So I want to fast forward till today, you know, from the time of the bagel store, the stoplight, and the stop sign not happening. On May 31st, Governor Christie in New Jersey landed a helicopter. You may have seen that story at his kid's baseball game. And it was in one of the towns that we have a Patch, and the Patch reporter and Patch photographer happened to be there, and they took a picture of Governor Christie getting out of his helicopter. And basically captured the fact, you know, from a government usage of that state police helicopter, he was going to his kid's game, which may have been fine, may have not been fine, but they were going to write a story how he showed up in the helicopter. It turns out it wasn't okay for him to use the helicopter to do that. But in the course of this conference and what's impactful in towns is also the real-time information. By the time we had taken the pictures, posted it on Patch, the other local newspapers saw it online, sent their reporters and photographers over, and the story blew up. And Governor Christie, when you fast forward through the entire situation, ended up paying back the state of New Jersey the cost of the helicopter landing at the field in New Jersey. And that's not the reason we started Patch, it's not the reason AOL is investing heavily in Patch, but that is one of the massive beneficial outcomes of having platforms and investing in journalism. It's also one of the huge benefits of the offline-online connection and being real-time, because if you think about the original stories of the Renaissance Fair, the stop sign, and the conversation with my father-in-law, on a real-time basis, people in my community should have been able to vote online, or they should have been able to interact with the stop sign vote. Every parent in that town should have known that the Renaissance Fair was there, which was important. And most importantly for me personally with my family is you had 5 people, 3 of them are small kids, but my wife and I ready to volunteer in town. I guarantee somebody in the town I live in needed help, and we would have been willing to help real time. And I think taking the power of things like Twitter or things like Facebook or things like Patch and connecting them together to connect humans together in an offline way as well as an online way, I think will actually help the government out. I think that was probably not specifically helpful for Governor Christie, but helpful for how people use resources from the government and what they're focused on. But 2 is the ability to actually have real-time people at that baseball game and cover that baseball game is a tremendous asset to the community. So our investment in community and in real time and in journalism, I think is going to be a very impactful piece of what happens community-wise in this country in the future. I'm sure other people will do it, but I think we're putting the single largest investment in communities in the United States in this space. And I'm really happy about it, I'm really excited about it, and I think hopefully we're going to make it into a great business as well. This morning when I got here, one of the Patch freelancers is actually here taking photos for the conference, and I just pulled him aside and asked him what his experience with Patch was. And it's very similar to what I just described, and he's actually applying to become a full-time editor at one of the Patch towns, which I hope he gets. But I'm excited about it. Thanks for having me today, and keep it real time.